Hello, America. Welcome back to another episode of The Triumph. This is Gerald Fielding, and I'm back again with our guest, who is a real estate investor and entrepreneur, Don Rushing. Thanks for being back on the program with us.
Hey, good to be back, Daryl. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Don, we were having a conversation the other day, and you made, I'm not going to quote this exactly, you can kind of correct me, but you made the comment, something like, if people think tomorrow is going to be the same as yesterday, they're mistaken, that our world has changed.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that discussion.
World. I kind of want to talk today a little bit about some of the influences that we may not even be aware of that kind of play into our attitudes and behaviors. Ultimately, our motivation or our pursuit of our goals and what we're trying to accomplish that might be in play that we may not even be aware of. And I have a few sound bites I kind of want to set this up with. But before we get into that, I kind of want to, because I think your comment kind of speaks to this idea a little bit, but in what way do you feel like the world's changed, and why is it that you think people aren't aware of the change and are just kind of moving forward business as usual?
Well, this is a conversation I engage in a lot, actually. But I've noticed a pattern, and just real quickly, speaking of patterns, life is full of patterns. And as a matter of fact, our brain, really one way to think about our brain is a pattern recognition machine. But that having been said, it does always amaze me how many people miss the patterns in life. But at any rate, one pattern I've noticed with, in my lifetime, but also looking back in history, is every time the world changes, every time the world evolves, the vast majority of the population remains stuck in the old world, and they're slow to evolve to it. And for the listeners, you'll have to look up this quote. I cannot remember who said this, but it's been said that in a world of constant change, it's actually those who can evolve that will inherit the earth. And that is a pretty profound statement. And look, the only constant is change. And with that, the rate of change seems to be speeding up. So learning to adapt, learning to evolve is going to be a skill that's really going to help you throughout your life, because the world is constantly changing. And yeah, so we're in the year 2020, and the world that existed in January of 2020, it's gone forever, and it's never coming back. It doesn't exist anymore. But I do, unfortunately, see the vast majority of the population not willing to accept that yet, and still being stuck in that old world. That concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want it to come back. They want the old world. They want that. Is that kind of what you're seeing? Why you think that's why people are?
Yeah, that's part of the pattern, because the old world, we knew it, right? Like we knew everything. We knew how it functioned. The old world's comfortable. And there's this narrative that we've grown up with in the United States for many generations now, but where we've been taught from a young age that you want to go to school, get good grades so you can get into a college and then get a good job so you can live a comfortable life. Or in other words, someday you're going to arrive at some point where then life's just cruise control and it's comfortable and it's easy. So we've been taught this narrative that one of the points of life is to get to where you're comfortable. My suggestion is that that's really not something you want to do if you think about it. What you really want to do is learn to get comfortable with uncomfortable, because the fact of the matter is we cannot control anything outside of the thoughts we think and the words we speak and how we respond or react to any situation. Outside of those three things, any control that we have it's an illusion, and it's an illusion that's going to lead to a big heartache in your life. So the idea of getting comfortable is actually probably one of your worst enemies, because every time the world moves on, you're wanting the old world back, and it's just never coming back. This isn't unprecedented what's happened in 2020. If you just look in history and study history, this has happened over and over and over again. It's a different trigger each time, but this is not unprecedented. This has happened over and over, and it's going to continue to happen over and over. And I would point out that if you do look back at the patterns in history, it's speeding up the frequency with how often the world changes. So again, you're really going to want to get to a point where you can get comfortable with uncomfortable and learn to adapt and evolve. And those are the people who are going to inherit the earth.
Yeah. I want to play this soundbite from Tony Robbins. He was kind of talking about this concept of patterns, and he was anticipation, but I want to get your reactions.
Sounds good.
Patient is the ultimate advantage. See, winners, leaders anticipate, losers react. The reason you get beat is you don't know where things are happening, so you react. Reaction is always stressful. And yet so much of our life is predictable if we just were to study it, not be caught up in our day-to-day. It's predictable the challenges you're going to have in your relationships, or with your kids, or with your body, or with your job, or with your economics, or with your mother-in-law or father-in-law. These are predictable. And if you were to anticipate these things.
All right, so I just cut it right there. But so anticipation is the ultimate advantage. And he said a lot of things are predictable if we just kind of study that. Is that kind of coincide with what you're thinking, or what's your take on that?
There's actually, that's a pretty profound little clip. And there's actually a lot that could be unpacked with that short soundbite. For the sake of time and, not putting the audience to sleep, we probably won't unpack it all, but, what Tony was talking about, and I mean, one of the great teachers of our time, this is true. And, but what he was talking about is this anticipation of what's going to happen in the future. He's talking about the fact that we're one of the few, if not the only species on the planet that can project into the future in our minds. We can actually predict the future. And if you think that's not a superpower, well, I'm not sure what is to you, but so that's what he's talking about, is projecting into the future in your mind and calculating the different outcomes. But something very profound that he pointed out is the vast majority of the population does not do it because they're so caught up in their day-to-day life. Yeah. And so what he's talking about there, what he's referring to there is this narrative that we've been taught since we've been young about, this is what life is really about. It's really about going to work and earning money and getting comfortable, buying things, getting things. But what ends up really happening is most people, the vast majority of people, end up spending the best hours of their best years in a subdivision watching TV. And that is very comfortable for those that achieve that. Not everyone in our population achieves that, but when you get stuck in that, it's very easy to want to stay there because that is very comfortable. But you're very susceptible in that situation to change, to the world changing. And it will become more and more difficult. And every time the world's changed in the modern age, it has become more and more difficult to maintain that. The spending the best years of your life in a subdivision. But yeah, most people are trying to, and we're really taught from a young age that, and they don't say it this way, but this is the way this is what they're really saying is, hey, you want to live the same year 80 times and call it a life. And, I would point out that it's been said, ships are safest in a harbor, but that's not what they were built for, right? And that's us. Of course, we're safer in a harbor, and the narrative about safety has been really ramped up in 2020. The problem with that is you'll, in an effort to try and maintain that subdivision life and that comfortable life, you're going to be more susceptible to relinquishing some of your freedoms in exchange for the maintaining of that. So yeah, when we get caught up in the day-to-day life of, oh, I got to earn the money because, well, look, I got to go to work tomorrow because I got bills to pay. That's the treadmill, the rat race. I mean, we've heard these things talked about a million times, but that's the danger, is getting comfortable and feeling like, and the idea of the narrative of there's a certain point or level where you arrive to or arrive at, and then after that it's cruise control, and you're really selling yourself short when you buy into that narrative, because there is no ceiling on what you can achieve. There is no limit on your potential. And, we didn't achieve the great things throughout history by arriving to a certain point and then staying there. That's not how this nation was built. This nation was not built by people like that. This nation was built by risk takers and people who rejected the notion of being comfortable, and not just here in America, but throughout the world. So yeah, pretty profound statement, or what he's saying there, for sure.
So I've heard you say before, well, the comment that you made, I hadn't heard you say, and put it this way, that you live the same year over 80 times and call it a life.
You're right.
That sounds really monotonous. How did we become conditioned to where success was status quo, nothing changes, we sit in our subdivision and watch television and don't have to worry, this whole comfort thing, versus growing and being more autonomous and living a different year each life? Like, your life is progressing and unfolding as a movie, not a rerun of the year before.
Yeah.
What do you think's led to that conditioning of thinking that that's success, that when you get there, that you're good, you just cruise control and
I think ultimately where that narrative came from was people who were afraid. They were afraid to push further, to do more, to go more, because anytime we push further, go further, do more, it's into the unknown, and that's really scary. It's it's an undeniable human trait that we fear what we don't know, that we fear what we don't understand. And so it's really, I think that came from fear. And someone somewhere one day just succumbed to the fear and said, I'm going to start telling people, maybe this is how it started. I don't know, but maybe it was one person or several people, and they started telling people that No, 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 no. The good idea is like, hey, get to a spot and then just easy street, or
Yeah.
and really, that's a way for them to deflect their fear that they're feeling of reaching their full potential. And I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
And then people just start creating stories around fear. They don't call it stories around fear. They call it something else. They call it good advice or sound advice, or but the fact of the matter is you can fail miserably at doing what you don't want to do. You can fail miserably. I mean, look around. That narrative of get a good job so you can get a good home in a subdivision, that doesn't work for everyone. It it only works for about half the population, if even that much. And so the fact of the matter is you can fail miserably trying to achieve that narrative. So you may as well take the risk of failing at what you want to do. We're taught from a young age, like, don't think about what you want to do. No, 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 no. Think about, get the good grades, behave, play by the rules, don't speak out, raise your hand to speak, get permission in school to relieve your bodily functions, sit in straight rows, and follow the rules. Don't question authority. Don't question adults. Like all these, those are just, that's propaganda by its very definition. And it's all programming us to, fit the mold, play it safe, to get in this comfort zone, because, the reality is that when you reach that, you become easier to manipulate. Again, we mentioned that, where you'll give up more and more if it means you get to keep that, right? So you become far easier to manipulate, and that's the danger. But what I am truly suggesting is the real danger is that you'll never reach your full potential.
Well, you've said a couple things that segues into this next soundbite I want to play, and it kind of segues into, I guess, kind of the tools, or how do we, if we're going to learn, gather information, gather data, and try to make decisions based off of that and do something more than just live a rerun of our life every year. What are the tools that we go to for that? But I want you to listen to this. It's another soundbite from Tony Robbins, and then I got a few others that we'll play later. But here it is.
Okay.
Yourself. And so good to see. What's controlling you? Well, what I'm focusing on is controlling me.
Actually, I just want to say first, because let me just set this up a little bit.
Yeah.
You made the comment, let me pause this, about people being worried about security. And we're in 2020, it's October. One of the big things that still kind of dominates the media is coronavirus, and a lot of media attention on that. So this clip is from Tony Robbins in 2017. So at the time, the Ebola disease was the big scare.
Yeah.
I just want you to kind of comment on this. Here it is.
Yourself. And so good to see. What's controlling you? Well, what I'm focusing on is controlling me. You can focus on something and make yourself crazy. You can focus on something and make yourself great. In this moment, you could be worried about Ebola, because we all know it's coming. People are freaked out all over the world. 36,000 people die a year of flu, and the whole world is focused on Ebola, because the news is not designed to inform you. It is designed to startle you, because that's how you sell things. So if you let someone else take control of your focus, your life will be in someone else's hands.
So two things there on that comment is the concept that the news is there to startle you, because that's what sells. That's part of the business model. And he's also talking about what you focus on. If someone else is in control of your focus, then they're ultimately in control of your life. like you've got to take control of your own focus and steer that attention to what it is you want, what you're working towards, not just be hooked by some other outside entity. But I was curious to your thoughts on that.
Well, I would suggest this is something that just is dominating my mind lately on how do we solve this very issue where people give up their focus. I see a world dominated by that now. The vast majority of the population, probably 85% of the population, they have no control over their focus, what they focus on. Now, as someone who used to be one of that 85%, I can empathize with that. I can understand it. And I remember thinking, I don't know, it was very profound to me once I realized I can determine what I focus on.
It seems that's powerful.
It is powerful because now I get to choose what I focus on. And now I'm not susceptible to, number one, the media, and I'm not susceptible to politicians, and I'm not susceptible to appointed officials. The nice thing about that is now, because I'm not allowing them to determine what my focus is, I can put that focus towards identifying who the true leaders on the planet are. And I can assure you, it is not any politicians, and it is certainly not anyone in the media. And those people, we follow them because we have to, not because we want to. You can begin to identify the true leaders by, okay, who is following them because they want to, not because they are forced to. But yeah, learning to take control of your focus, because what you focus on expands. And the danger in that, by giving up your focus, is that you begin to think that that is reality. You begin to think that that is truly what's happening. Yeah, there's definitely a war going on for our focus and our attention in the world today. And I dare suggest that 2020 will be looked back on as, it is going to be looked back on as a tipping point. I feel a little bit of sympathy for those that are kind of scheming to use this to their advantage, because I know they're ultimately going to fail. And I feel a little bit sorry for them that they're wasting their energy on that. But 2020 will be looked back on as not only the tipping point when the pendulum swings the other direction for humanity, and ultimately leads us to complete unity and prosperity as a human race. It'll be looked at as that trigger, but it will also be looked back at as the year a full-scale attack was launched to gain our focus. It's been ramped up considerably this year, and it's just blatantly open, and they're not hiding anything. But nonetheless, because people are so caught up in their daily lives, they've fallen victim to that, and they're caught up in the reality that that what's being told to them is the true reality. That's unfortunate. It drives me a little insane at the moment, but that is what is taking place right now. A war is going on, being waged for your attention. And when you're caught up in your daily life and trying to maintain that comfort and trying to avoid change, you're very susceptible to that.
So there's a book called The Four Agreements that was written by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he has this about this hooking our attention or vying for our attention. It says the adults around us hooked our attention and put information into our minds through repetition. That is the way we learned everything that we know. By using our attention, we learned a whole reality. We learned how to behave in society, what to believe and what not to believe, what to accept, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, what is good and what is bad, what is beautiful and what is ugly, and what is right and what is wrong. It was all there already, all that knowledge, all those rules and concepts about how to behave in the world. And so like what's hooking your attention is really what's kind of setting the rules or setting the limits or boundaries for us. So I think that concept is really powerful. So I wanted to play this little clip here. So this is from a documentary produced by Netflix called The Social Dilemma. A lot of people I know had recommended this and had watched it, and there was a lot of buzz about it. And they interview a lot of top tech developers for a lot of the major companies, software companies. And one of the guys they interviewed made the comment, he'd been in the tech industry, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years. And he said when he first got in, they used to sell hardware and software. It was a pretty easy business. And now it's really about selling users and selling people's attention. But there was one gentleman who they interviewed, and I don't have his name in front of me right now. You can watch the documentary. It's called The Social Dilemma on Netflix. But he talks about tools, and he uses the analogy of a bicycle and compares it to the, I kind of want to get your reaction to this.
No one got upset when bicycles showed up, right? Like if everyone's starting to go around on bicycles, no one said, oh my God, we've just ruined society. Like bicycles are affecting people. They're pulling people away from their kids. They're ruining the fabric of democracy. People can't tell what's true. Like we never said any of that stuff about a bicycle. If something is a tool, it genuinely is sitting there, waiting patiently. If something is not a tool, it's demanding things from you. It's seducing you. It's manipulating you. It wants things from you. And we've moved away from having a tools-based technology environment to an addiction and manipulation-based technology environment. That's what's changed. Social media isn't a tool that's just waiting to be used. It has its own goals, and it has its own means of pursuing them by using your psychology against you.
So kind of some interesting stuff there, because I think I like tools. I have a lot of tools. I consider my computer and a lot of the technology I have as tools because I use them for things, use them to produce things, produce this podcast or whatnot. But the idea that we've moved away from a tool-based technology environment to an addiction and manipulation base, where a lot of these companies, are selling our attention to advertisers. Advertisers pay for a lot of these things that are free because they want to put their ads in front of us. But how much do you think that's influencing people's attention and kind of dumbing down possibly what they might otherwise be motivated to try and accomplish or do with their lives?
Well, that's a huge subject. And one could have hours of conversation multiple times, and we need to be as a society, by the way. It's a conversation we're not having enough yet. And it's a very important conversation. But yeah, certainly we now as a species understand by and large how the human brain works as far as it relates to addiction and attention getting and fear. And so now we have this technology that has, 50, 100, or thousands of engineers on the backside that understand how the human brain works. And they design that technology around that understanding.
Because they're trying to maximize a result, which for them is, profit or advertising.
It's money, right? It's money,
That's
right?
really maybe our best good or highest and best.
Look, we've basically got two issues going on here. We've got one, we've got this really bad idea, the worst lie in humanity, which is that there is a lack of resources. There's not enough of everything to go around. And because of that, we need to create a money system to place different values on things. And those illusionary resources that we deem as finite rather than infinite. Now they can hold more value, so we can kind of control the flow of absorption into the human race on those products. And that's a really that's creating this problem of, well, we got to get more money. And that starts at a young age, and you got to grow up and you got to get this certain job to make X amount of money so you can have more of the resources. And so now, instead of teaching that there's something unique about you as a human, instead of teaching that from a young age and teaching to explore that as you go through the education system, it's actually meant to stamp that out and get you to, like, no, don't focus on what makes you unique. Don't focus on what you're passionate about. Don't focus on what you're obsessed with, as far as in a good sense. Like, what am I obsessed with fixing about the world? Because I mean, I have passions, but I also have an obsession about a few things on the planet that really bug me and that I'll see changed before I leave this planet. Those are good obsessions, right? And then I have my passions. I'm passionate about music and so on, and hiking and that kind of stuff. But the discussion is all about, it's really centered around money. They cloak it with so many other different things and try to make it sound like it's a good idea, but it's really about the money, and instead of doing what makes you happy. So when we start doing things based off of money instead of what makes us happy, well, now we run into these problems of these horrible ideas that came up in the early 70s from an economist, Milton Friedman, and the idea of, look, money, the number one responsibility of business is to maximize its profits within the bounds of the law. So here we are. It's not illegal to manipulate people's minds and attention. It's within the bounds of the law, and we're just maximizing our profit. Really bad idea, and it's one we need to let go of. So we got that issue going on, but then we also have the probably the worst issue, which is humans' desire to control everything, including other humans. It's our greatest folly, and when we overcome that, when we evolve above that and beyond that, is when we're going to propel ourselves culturally, technologically, and socially. But right now, it's really a completely acceptable way of life, the idea of control. And unfortunately, it's very soul destroying to us. But nowhere are we taught that once you let go of that illusion of control is when you find your true inner happiness and allow others to be who they are, which gives you permission to be who you are. Those are the two things really tripping us up as humans right now. It's that pursuit of money, and money's not the root of all evil. I think whoever said that just didn't have any. But and if money's the root of all evil, like, why do we spend our entire lives trying to get more of it?
Yeah.
Even religions try to get money, So it's not the root of all evil. I think, that's a very limiting belief, but nonetheless, it's the pursuit of money, for the sake of just getting more money. And again, money's not a bad thing. Money's actually the opposite of poverty. And, money, like the more money I have, the more people I can help, the more good I can do in the world. And also the more individual freedom I have, currently. That I don't think it's great that we structure our society that way, but currently that's the reality of it. But this idea of control, if we could just let go of that, we have court systems that want to control society. We have politicians that want to control society. We have media, big media that wants to control the information and control society, and on and on and on. And it's just really a destructive, soul destroying, both individually and collectively. And that's really what's tripping us up and causing us to say, well, it's not illegal. Let's go ahead and pursue it.
John, I know you've got to go in a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break and then come back. And I just want to get some final thoughts before you go. All right, welcome back. Thanks for staying on for another segment. Don, thanks for being here for a few more minutes. Appreciate the conversation as always. Don, you have an interesting story. We've talked about your backstory. If our listeners haven't listened to that, check out some of our other podcasts with Don, and he talks about kind of where he's come from and what he's doing now. And so I feel like you're one that can really speak to this, but I want to talk about, if the goal isn't a monetary system, if it's not prioritizing the advertisers that market to us, like what are some of what would be a better focus for people? And then I want to kind of talk about what are some of the tools that you've used that might be an alternative. Because again, I think we think in terms of tools and we turn to our social media or to the news or whatever for information. And we're realizing that those outlets aren't optimized to give us the truth. They're optimized for other purposes. And so we may or may not always be getting good information there. And I know you're big on education. I've heard you talk several times, and I know that you dedicate a good portion of your day each day towards improving yourself and education. So I kind of want you to speak to that a little bit, but I want you to, I'm going to play this quote from Tony Robbins. So he's in a kind of an open forum. He's talking to a man and he's kind of responding to this man's comments, but he's talking about kind of like what we're really after. And it doesn't say it in this clip, but one of the things he talked about is how you could have $1 billion and still not be happy. Like what are the things that really bring happiness? And he kind of touches on it. I kind of want to get your thoughts and then maybe talk about some of the tools you've used to kind of get off the treadmill or rat race, so to speak, and kind of live more of a purposeful, intentional life. So here is that quote from Tony Robbins.
Happiness. So he's got a long story, but he just freaking wants to be happy. And most of us are a long story. If I do this and this and this, if I have 14 perfect children, if I change the world, if I make $1 trillion, if I do these things, then you have some people's happy, some people's free, some people feel a life of meaning. Some people say I'm lovable or I'm loved. We all have different words, but we're after emotions. Everything you do, and most of us in this group are pretty intellectual individuals, pretty smart individuals, at least we think we are, but this gets in the way often of this. And we forget this is what we're after.
So the fact that we're after emotions. So what's your reaction to that, Don?
My response to that is, first I would encourage our listeners to definitely spend some time listening to Tony Robbins, and anytime you spend time reading a book from someone or watching an interview with someone or podcast or listening to them talk, that is the same as having a conversation with that person. And so, spend some time with Tony Robbins, among others we can name as well. But like, there's no way you're going to have a 30-minute conversation with Tony Robbins and leave the same person that you were prior to that 30-minute conversation. So, but talking about the happiness, like, so this is that narrative that we're taught from a young age, that happiness, that our happiness is on the other side of something, some event, some relationship, some possession. And not only is it not true, not only is it not true, it's the worst idea ever. Your happiness is inside of you. It's in here. And the thing is we don't, by not teaching that, now people are running around out here trying to find their happiness when it was right in here the whole time. Now think of how that might change our world if every one of us knew and was taught that your happiness is within you. No one can give it to you. You're the only one who can provide it to yourself. People think being with a certain person will make them happy, and that's a very unfair expectation to place upon another human being. They'll never be able to live up to that, and that is only going to lead to heartache. Your happiness is within side of yourself. It's never on the other side of a relationship, an event, or a possession. So it's really unfortunate in my mind that we don't teach that from a young age. That's creating a lot of unhappiness in the world. It's creating a lot of messed up minds. And but in our defense, like, that's just what we were taught from a young age, right? I mean, and that's what our parents were taught. And so hopefully we can break that cycle.
I just want to interject right here too. I think this is what I guess kind of bugs me, whether you're talking about technology or even things technical. There's other forces that sometimes we're not aware of that are at play, that we, rather than recognizing what's happening, blame ourselves. We think we're not smart enough, we're not good enough, there must be something wrong with me. When really there's things going on that we're not even aware of that are impacting us. If we just get our handle on that, get control of our attention and focus, and really just start to realize, see things what they really are, and then just make decisions based off of that instead of being manipulated. That's what kind of, I guess, bugs me.
Yeah. Well,
not being aware that, we have the ability to write our own story, or to create, that we are a creative force, things like that we just haven't really been taught. So we're playing a game with, two arms tied behind our back.
Yeah. And I literally remember in school, so I was a C and D student, mostly a D. And I remember all through school, now early on, I do have the vivid memory early on in elementary school that I was completely normal and there was nothing wrong with me. But eventually, because I didn't fit into that assembly factory system, they were forced to start pointing the finger at me instead of saying, what do we need to do different? No, there must be something wrong with this child. And so that started to become the narrative for me. And then, by the time I got into middle school, I have the vivid memory of believing that there was something wrong with me. And the unfortunate thing is that also is about 1/3 of the students in the education system today, if not a little bit more. And that's a horrible disservice that we're doing to them. But rather than change, we have to create labels. We create labels. They've gotten very creative since my time in school. And the labels are designed to do the same thing that labels are always designed to do, which is deflect the attention away from the actual problem, which is the education system. And it must be the child. And there must be something wrong with them. Their brain doesn't work correctly, which is a very ambiguous statement to start with. But so, we come up with terms like uh, oppositional defiant disorder, because they won't follow the rules and they defy us. So there must be something wrong with them, and instead of me, surely I don't need to gain more skills as a parent or as an educator. It must be them. And we come up with terms, and these are very controversial, but I don't have a problem speaking out against these things, because we need to speak truth about these things. And the truth is oppositional defiance disorder and ADD and ADHD, those didn't grow in the forest like a tree. That's some made up shit that somebody created. It's not a real thing. It's not a reality. That's somebody else's story. And those things were created to deflect the attention away from the real issue, is that we still, in the year 2020, are trying to educate with a one-size-fits-all, instead of recognizing we're all individuals and we all have strengths and weaknesses. For example, like, anyway, we teach these things, and we even give grades, A, B, C, D. And like, I just remember thinking, like, there's something wrong with me because I can only get D's. Now that I'm an adult and I've had a successful life, and part of a successful life is having failures, by the way. In fact, we should probably get rid of that word failure. It's just find another way. And those are learning experiences, but we try to put negative light on people who fail, and when people don't conform to what the dominant culture thinks should be, then we create labels, and we label those people to take the attention off of the fact, like, that relieves us from the responsibility of doing something better. And I see that today. And so I've raised 3 daughters, and my middle daughter, like, she straight A's in school, never even had a tardy in high school. I never had to help her with homework. She just on a roll the whole time. I remember the delusion of the time, thinking that meant I was a great parent. But that was just complete delusion. And then my youngest daughter is now having the experience that I'm having, which is like, she just struggles in there, and they begin labeling her, and something's wrong with her. She's got attention deficit disorder, or whatever they call it. And I finally and thank goodness there's true doctors and psychologists beginning to speak out against these things. But one term I got from Dr. John D. Martini was, kids, and I was able to share this with my daughter and continue to share it with her all the time, to help her ward off the mind manipulation that they're trying to put upon her. Because, when you have a student in your class, now the administrators are coming to you going, well, what's up with this student? Why are you failing here? And then above the administrators is, the next level, and they're coming to the school saying, well, what's up with these students in your school? And why are you failing here? And so, and I can empathize with them up to the point where they make that switch in their mind and say, look, this is putting my job and my safety and security, comfort at risk. And so now I'm going to turn on this child and start labeling them and saying they're the problem. And you know, and we do all these tests to compare people. The worst idea ever is comparing anyone with anyone. The only person you should be comparing yourself with is the person you were yesterday. But we don't want to teach that. That doesn't relieve us of the responsibility of, you know, needing to come up with a better way to educate on a mass scale, right? But you know, now my daughter's in that position, and Dr. John D. Martini pointed out, hey, kids don't have ADHD; they have ASO, attention surplus order. They have a surplus of attention in the things that interest them. Well, there's actually nothing wrong with that. And, you know, aside from learning the basics, you know, and yep, you get anyone listening, you know, I'm not a trained educator, but I'm still going to speak out, and I'm still going to speak up, and you cannot shut me down because I'm not a trained educator, and because I'm not an expert in any one subject, or you or anyone else. That does not disqualify us from beginning conversations and from asking questions. So I will not fall for what you're trying to teach the children, which is, hey, don't defy us, don't speak out, because I will defy you and I will speak out. I'm no longer asking your permission. I'm giving you notice that I'm going to speak out about these things, and that I will change your profession before I leave this earth. Because 1/3 of the children are like dross that are getting thrown off, and I'm not okay with that, and neither should you be. But like, we're teaching the wrong things, and it's creating the problems we have in the world. We can't figure out why we have so many problems. Look, it's pretty simple. If we want something different, we need to start doing something different. It's not a mystery here. Like, we keep doing the same things, and we keep getting the same, more of the same, and it keeps compounding and getting worse. If we want things to get better, we have to do better. If we want things to change, we have to change. And it all starts on an individual level. Truly, it does. So, you know, you kind of asked about, like, well, where do you go, Dawn, to kind of get your information? Because, you know, my advice to anybody, like, I've been on a media diet for well over a decade now. And I like to joke around, you know, CNN, the constant negative news network, or the crisis news network. Like, they're not doing us a public service. And the unfortunate thing is people believe they're doing us a public service. I'm not sure. And there are literally people in our communities that do not realize that the media outlets are a business. I'm not sure where they think they get the money, their income from, to pay for everything. They're a business, you know? And so it's maximize profits within the bounds of the law. It's not illegal to constantly report everything negative. It's not illegal to report things from your viewpoint. You know, you never see the media down at the intersection down here where, you know, 100 or 200,000 cars every day go through the intersection. I've never once seen a media person down there saying, hey, you know, coming at you live from the intersection down here, and we just wanted to report that 200,000 cars a day go through here, and there hasn't been one single accident. Like, they don't do that. You know, they're not out at the airport saying, hey, you know, there's 100,000 flights every day in the world and not one plane crashed today. Like, they don't want to talk about that stuff, right? Once in a while, they do some puff piece, you know, little snippet of feel good story, you know, oh, high five, the one thing. But there's more of that going on in the world than they want to allude to, because it doesn't profit them. Like, guess who also knows how the brain works? Not just the engineers on the backside of those apps or websites. The media knows how the brain functions. And we've given up our attention collectively, and they take our attention where they want it to go. And so if you can unplug from that, great. And then people will say, well, where do you go for your information? Because you do want to be informed, correct? When I unplug from all the noise and those who are aggressively and actively trying to get my attention, when you unplug from that, now you have an abundance of an abundance of attention that you can now shift somewhere else. And so, okay, where do we go? Well, just look around the world. Once you turn that noise off, you can begin to look around the world and see who the true leaders are. And how do you spot a leader? How do you spot leaders? And I can assure you, leaders are no longer elected. That's the definition of a leader. You just have to get elected. They're not our leaders. People don't follow them because they want to. They follow them because they have to. You can spot leaders because they build bridges, not walls. You can spot leaders because they don't use the language of hate. They use the language of unity. You can spot leaders because they create more leaders. You can spot leaders because they're never promoting themselves. They're promoting ideas that will benefit all of humanity. But you're never going to spot those as long as you keep relinquishing your attention to those who want to manipulate you to just hold your attention. So that's the key is unplugging from those who are intentionally manipulating your attention. And then you'll look, it's been said that, when you change the way you see things, the things you look at will change. So unplug from all that noise and just let it go. And you'll start to see a whole new world that you didn't realize existed.
I know we just got a minute or two, so we don't have to go into detail on these, but what would be some of the tools, maybe the 5 things? Like, I know you journal. I know that's a big thing. I know you'll watch YouTube videos. I know you mentor, and you also take mentoring from mentors.
Correct.
Are there other education outlets that you subscribe to or use where you go to study various topics?
Yeah, there's some great ones out there, and and those leaders are on YouTube. Of course, you could just sit on YouTube all day and watch, jumping cats or or CNN, get more of the baloney fed into you. But look, those leaders are also on there as well. And so YouTube is a great place to seek out those individuals because they're all out there actively working to better the world by sharing these ideas. And as I pointed out earlier, they're no longer asking permission. They're giving notice. But some of the outlets I like, Mind Valley University is probably the premier global educational company on the planet. What I love about them is they bring all these leaders together, and they set up master classes through these leaders, talks. So Mind Valley University is a great one. Also Singularity University is another great one. TEDx.
Yeah.
Look, not everybody, the first thing we need to do is move away from this world that we've created where you have to be right all the time and you have to be perfect and you can't ever make a mistake and you can't do anything wrong and you can't ever screw up. That's a really bad idea because it's impossible. And we need to quit. We just need to And it starts with letting yourself be imperfect. It starts with giving yourself permission to be imperfect. And it starts with realizing that my imperfections are what make me perfect for helping my fellow man. And and it also allows me, it allows myself to give others permission to be imperfect. And so now I'm not going to get caught up in judging them, and if you're afraid of being perfect, that's a very stressful way to live. I have some really bad ideas, Daryl. But we got to get them out. We got to talk about them, because then other people can, comment back, suggest back. And then that helps me realize that either one, I need to think that through a little bit more, or two, yeah, God, that really was kind of a bad idea. So don't be afraid of, if you're waiting to be perfect before you speak up, you're going to be waiting forever. Look, you can say anything you want as long as you say it with respect. This is the key that's missing today. Nobody speaks with respect anymore, and everybody listens so that they can reply instead of listening to understand. And people are so concerned with being right that we're individually, on an individual level, a corporation level, and a government level, we're trying to silence and censor and suppress opposing viewpoints and opinions. That's your red flag to yourself, that number one, those who are trying to do that are not our leaders and not someone you should be giving your attention to. And number two, if you find yourself doing that, that's your signal that you need to improve. I'm always talking about the interior remodeling. One of my mentors, Robin Sharma, he's the author of the 5 a.m. Club, several books, but he always talks about, what is your mindset and what is your heart set? And so, you want to spend that time doing that interior remodeling every day. The only person you want to be better than today was the person you were yesterday. And like I mentioned earlier, the only person you want to compare yourself is to the person you were yesterday. Never compare yourself to another human. You're incomparable. Each of us are. We're so unique and we have so much potential that comparing only does us injustice. We all have something to contribute. And look, the issues facing humanity now moving forward, we can only solve collectively. We have moved past the time in human history where individuals can solve problems that are facing the human race as an entirety. We've elevated to the point where it's collectively we have to solve these. And so we begin that through communication. And so we say what we want to say with respect, and spend time refining your words. Don't use the language of hate, and don't use lazy language and lazy placement of words and lazy uses of words. And really think it through and come to be able to articulate your points, but allow others the same opportunity. I'm every day, every time I speak, I'm improving how to articulate what it is I'm trying to talk about. And I'm so grateful others allow me to do that, but I allow myself to do that, which lets me allow those I speak with to do that. So it's really time to up-level our thinking and up-level our character. That's the only way we're getting out of this situation we find ourselves as a species right now. The only way out of this is through it. The old world's not coming back. That's gone. But we're the ones who can change it. It's us. It's not, no one's coming from somewhere out in space. No one's coming out of the sky to solve this. It's us. Like, and by the way, we have the power and the ability and what we need inside of us to do it. We just have to start we just have to start thinking on a higher level, which is, we allow others to speak. We do not try to silence people, because if you're wrong, doesn't matter if you're right, you're still wrong. Does that make sense? So what did you achieve? And, any illusion you have of controlling the population, like we've seen that throughout history, and the delusion that you have some control, and you pass on and history moves on. You had no control. It was a delusion within your own mind. So like, don't give into that. Freedom equals prosperity. Freedom will equal more prosperity for everyone, not just the ones at the lower levels. If you're in the higher levels of influence and money, like, freedom of the human race will elevate you as well. We've got some big issues to solve. I still say don't count us out yet. We're going to pull off an upset. And it's not a great idea. It's our destiny.